I'm not Tara. But tonight I will be exploring with you 3 deliberate awareness practices for abandoning craving and cultivating liberation-driven desire, tools for awakening, compassion, and wisdom. So I want to begin by looking at what we already know about craving. What we already know is that it's craving that's at the root of all of our suffering. We know that. And we know that the basic element in craving is that there is impermanence, which is essentially like trying to balance a mustard seed on the tip of a moving needle. It's just impossible to do. And we know that the basic unsatisfactoriness that exists in impermanence always existed. We know because we've tried holding on. And we've gotten the rope burn to prove it, right? But in the end, those of us who've been practicing for a while, and those of us who are just embarking on the practice, we've discovered what the Buddha discovered, that whatever it is that I'm clinging to, it's not mine, it's not I, it's not myself. Because if it were, I could command it. I could make it do whatever I wanted it to do. And so we know, most of us know by now, that this craving that's plagued us for so long has no fixed location. It has no residence. It has no mailing address. It's everywhere, all the time, incessant and insatiable. Know that? Anybody? As soon as you think about the perfect pasta dish, you think you found the very perfect sauce, something to soothe the appetite. You notice how the mind rises up and craves then the perfect dessert. Like a vast underworld of weeds popping in and out of existence, despite how often we trim them back, right? They just keep coming. It's never enough. But here's the thing. As we come to know the nature of craving, we see the many ways that we get hooked. We see it just like needlefish see the shiny bobble on the surface of the water. And it looks very appealing. It looks very appealing until we bite and we get hooked. And then it's too late. And sometimes, despite how often we get hooked, we do find ourselves back in the same patterns. Like when I first moved to DC about 15 years ago, I discovered the Beltway. We didn't have a Beltway in Arkansas. And I noticed that because I had such rampant anxiety, I was always looking at the Beltway through this film of anxiety, and it became very difficult for me to see the faint signs, the exit signs. So it was as if I was going around and around and around in a loop, and I couldn't get off. And this is the path that the loops of craving take. Bless our hearts. The Buddha discovered on his first watch on the night of his enlightenment, wherein he saw the world clearly for the first time as if through a blemish-free mirror. This is what the Buddha wrote. The countless deaths and rebirths of creatures determined by the karma of past action. And when the Buddha saw us sort of looping around and around, cycle after cycle of suffering, according to the text, compassion welled up in him because he saw how blind and how pitiful we are, with no understanding of the laws that direct what we call faith, right? But in truth, we have the power to take matters into our own hands. And so knowing this, as we do, knowing this nature of craving, knowing the way it keeps us in a loop, we have two choices. Either we can keep trying to fight the craving instinct, push it down, out of the way, out of sight, out of mind. And we all know how well that works out, right? Or we can take the Buddhist path of abandoning craving and harnessing desire, liberation-driven desire, much in the way that in the olden days we might have harnessed a horse or a donkey before cable, Showtime, and Game of Thrones. And I'd like to get into it a little bit tonight by telling you a bedtime story. When was the last time you've had a bedtime story? And I'd like to tell the story in a way that sort of cracks open the bitter fruit of craving and exposes the dark, addictive seeds so that we can see inside. We can see for ourselves that its nature is really empty. And whatever it is you're craving, whatever it is, a kid, a partner, a new job, more sex, less sex, it cannot deliver. Craving cannot ultimately give you what you want, because craving doesn't have it to give. And so the hope is that if we keep accessing and seeing inside this bitter fruit, then we have a chance to abandon the delusion of the promise that craving holds once and for all. Just like most of us have abandoned the illusion of Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny. Most of us. Because the Buddha knew, he knew that as we practice this abandoning the fleeting and childish and sexy delusions of craving, that we would discover the potential locked deep inside a different kind of fruit. Desire. And not desire as an end unto itself, not desire as the prettier, sexier sister to craving, but desire as an instrument for breaking free of the wheel of samsara, the wheel of suffering, once and for all. In this way, desire as it's naturally experienced through our six sense gates can be employed and used in our daily life. And we can enjoy a nice cup of tea. It's okay. We can enjoy a beautiful sunset. We can take pleasure in making love or enjoying the benefits of meditation. But we hold it wisely. We hold desire wisely, as the Buddha taught in the Kalama Sutta, in his simile of the snake. He said this: a man who grasps a snake unwisely finds that the snake has the opportunity and cause to attack and injure and kill him. But a man who wisely grasps the snake finds that he is safe from harm. This is the true Dhamma, as it is with the snake, the Buddha wrote. It takes right skill and right understanding to grasp either. All that to say, friends, is that there is a space. There is a space between craving and desire for liberation. And that space is the wide open field of our practice, teaching us how to harness that desire is the duty of the Four Noble Truths, which do not demand that we abandon desire, but only that we comprehend suffering, that we realize its end, and that we develop the Eightfold Path. So I'll do so by telling you a bedtime story. And I mean, it's an old tale, but it still has wise, powerful import. It's a classic, ancient Indian tale called the Ramayana. And in this tale, two star-crossed lovers, Sita, the ancient Juliet, and Rama, the ancient Romeo, move in and out of togetherness and separation, and coming together and moving apart. And this coming in and out of togetherness and separation has been interpreted as the way we move in and out of craving, in and out of practice. Only in this tale, Rama, little does he know, is really an incarnation of God. And Sita's longing for him has been interpreted as our longing to return to God or to return to Brahma. Okay? So unlike in Romeo and Juliet, when it comes to getting back together after they've been separated, they have help from a little monkey named Hanuman. How many of you have heard this story? Just a couple. Oh, good. The story begins like most epic tales with a battle between gods and demons. Heaven loses this particular battle, and I know that's disturbing, but heaven loses. And a demon king named Ravana takes a victory lap and extorts the ruling god Brahma into making him unslayable to every creature in heaven and the underworld. So Ravana was like an ancient Hulk Hogan, and he was braggadocious like Muhammad Ali. He was full of himself. So he got caught up in his ego, and he didn't ask the gods to make him unslayable to animals and humans, only creatures of heaven and the underworld. So, seizing on this huge oversight, this huge grand underestimation, the Council of Gods got together, and they asked another god by the name of Vishnu to take human form which Ravana didn't account for. So Vishnu, the god Vishnu, does his thing. He spins around in circles and clicks his heels together and splits himself into 4 parts, 4 brothers. The oldest and strongest of which becomes who else but Rama. The God council gets together and they ask the goddess Lakshmi to take human form and to become who else but Sita, Rama's wife. So she clicks her heels together and she takes human birth and she's chosen to be Rama's wife. Now the first tragedy in the story happens when Rama and Sita become human. They continue to be praiseworthy, they continue to be virtuous, but they lose their awareness of their divine endowment. And they no longer remember that they're gods. Now, in the interest of time, I'm going to make a 25,000 verse bedtime story short. Rama's stepmother cheats him out of his father's throne. And through her doings, somehow he agrees to be banished to the forest for 13 years with Sita and his stepbrother. So off to the dark forest they go. It's here in the dark forest where Ravana encounters them for the first time. But instead of going after Rama, he decides to go after Sita. And he does this by transforming himself into a deer and waiting until one day when she's alone at the campsite. Sita and the stepbrother were off hunting or fishing. And he lures her deep into the forest and kidnaps her and takes her to the land of the demons. You still with me? But before her abduction is complete, Sita thinks really quickly. So she quietly and secretly, she peels off her bracelets and her anklets and her gold earrings, and she drops them into the hands of 2 monkeys. And then she's whisked away and off to the land of the demons, cut off from her beloved Rama. But her desire to be with him is still so strong, it's still unwavering, despite the fact that Ravana tries with all his might to compel her, to possess her, to completely consume her. She cannot be swayed. She wants to be with her man. In this way, Ravana represents all of us, right? Trying our best to quench the insatiable craving, maybe with love, maybe with money, maybe with relationships, but in some way trying to satisfy that hunger. In this way, Ravana is working with all his might to demand Sita's esteem, completely ignoring her desire. And that represents the craving that the Buddha pronounced is the cause of suffering. So when Rama returns to the campsite and discovers that his beloved Sita is missing, and that he is separated from the object of his desire and his delight, he is simply beside himself. And so he seeks help from the monkey Hanuman. Well, Hanuman is in really well with the other 2 monkeys. So he manages to get Sita's jewels, and he gives them to Rama. And in turn, Rama decides to send Hanuman to the land of the demons, and he gives him a ring to take with him to give to Sita. So off Hanuman goes with Rama's ring, Well, when Sita discovers Hanuman with this ring, she's overcome with delight. She couldn't believe it. And can't you just hear Luther Vandross in the background? Right? She's all excited. And she gets a bright idea. She decides to use Hanuman as a homing pigeon. And she decides to take a gold leaf, with a pearl mounted on it that her father gave her at her wedding. And she decides to send Hanuman back to Rama with this gold leaf and this pearl. Hanuman had just joined the monkey union. And so he tried to appeal to Sita, can't you just ride on my back and let me take you to Rama, But no. Sita wanted Rama to come to hell and get her himself. Now, ladies, if this sounds like anything you've done to your partner, just put your head down and nod. We won't know who you are. She wanted him to come to hell to get her. And so, Hanuman in this classic love story, who, by the way, is also a god, he represents that space between craving and our futile attempts to satisfy that craving, and pure desire itself, that formless, deathless, unconditioned awareness, like all other pure states that we call home. So Hanuman's function in this classic tale is to remind us of just how crucial mindfulness practice is, how crucial it is for distinguishing craving, which is what caused Ravana to kidnap Sita in the first place, to distinguish it from desire, which is what caused Sita to drop her worldly encumbrances, to drop her jewelry in an attempt to get back home. But the tale also serves to help us closely investigate the space between the painful separation, because much of our suffering we experience when we find that the patterns of craving, our patterns of craving, have once again separated us from our deep desire, to snap out of what Tara likes to call the trance. We know, we've experienced when that craving separates us from our deep desire, to be separated from our cherished delusions that the archetypal Santa Claus really is coming to town. Right? We know better. A Zen Buddhist monk walks up to a hot dog stand. And he says to the vendor, "Give me one of everything." So the vendor makes him a hot dog with everything and hands it to the Buddhist monk. The monk gives him a $20 bill, and the vendor takes it and puts it in his cash register, then shuts the door. The monk says, "Wait, where's my change?" The vendor replies, "All change must come from within." Right? So we all know what it's like to be separated from the ultimate unconditioned belief that we should have what's ours. We all know what it's like, especially if we can find someone else to blame for not having what we want. Our parents, the neighbor with the barking dog, the employer that just won't give us a promotion. The problem is that in our haste to gratify our craving, usually, we just sort of leapfrog right over the altar of our practice, which is that black, rich soil of direct experience with craving itself, encountering the craving fully, cracking it all the way open, looking inside and seeing and looking and knowing for ourselves that that dark, addictive seed of craving not only leaves us empty-handed time and time and time again, but it leaves us locked in this beltway loop, this pattern of craving and insatiable hunger. And the truth is that the only cure for craving, the only cure for clinging and grasping was right under our nose the whole time. It's what the Buddha called non-attachment. It's the equivalent to abandoning interest in the first place. In the same way that if you're, maybe you've gone to a foreign country and you see an item that you like, and you want it, the person says, $80. And you know it's not worth $80. So you say, $40. Oh, $80, right? You go back and forth, and you try to haggle them down. Do you know that feeling you get when you just get tired of haggling and you just sort of throw your hands up and say, never mind. Lack of interest, you lose interest. Or you catch yourself in the storefront mirror haggling over and over, and you just decide you don't want it anymore. That's non-attachment, when you let go. You see, though we know that full enlightenment is an attainable goal because the Buddha is enlightened. We allow ourselves permission to begin practicing from the place of just seeing our separation. And for now, just for a little while, just for now, we let that place, that awareness of separation, we just let that be enough. It's in the same way that Bhante Gunaratama at Bhavana Society likes to say, when a man goes to the seashore, he doesn't wait for the waters to calm before getting in, because it would never happen. And so we allow the awareness of our separation to be our starting place. We allow Hanuman to be a role model for us. We're neither gods, we're not human, fully gods. But we're doing what we can. Often we're doing the best we can to integrate all those many conflicted parts of ourselves, the parts that get elated, the parts that get depressed, the 10,000 joys and the 10,000 sorrows, the parts of us that feel deep, deep longing or loss or emptiness or hunger, all of the dichotomous components that we all experience, all of us, to some degree or another, most of the time. Hanuman's willingness to carry those messages back and forth between Rama and Sita represents his loyalty and his devotion to practice and his steadiness, his undying willingness can encourage us to allow those times of separation to not kill our commitment to practice. but to help us start over from that spot 1,000,000 times if necessary. His ability to stay present for and awake to what was happening between Rama and Sita offers us a glimpse at 3 deliberate awareness practices that I'd like to invite you to just explore for just a moment. They were practices coined by the very famed UU minister named Forrest Church. Reverend Forrest Church is a minister of a very large UU church in New York City. And he has cancer. The cancer is serious and cannot be cured. Reverend Church knows that it's going to take his life, and he's sad that his life is going to end before he's able to finish doing all he wants to do, before he can meet the grandchildren that are yet to be born. But he's not afraid of dying. He's comfortable with the fact that his time has come and that he must soon say goodbye. So knowing that he'll die soon, Reverend Church suggests we should laugh. We should really live. You know, we should love. And then he gave us 3 more jewels. We should want what we have. We should do what we can. We should be who we are. So let's just briefly explore each. Wanting what we have. Because it's such a beautiful gateway for us to walk through this practice of figuring out how to use desire to find the exit from the wheel of suffering. Bubba and Jake chartered a plane with a pilot to drop them off in the wilds of Alaska for a week of elk hunting. Just the same as they did the year before. When the pilot returned to the plane, Bubba exclaimed joyfully to the pilot, "We had a great hunting trip. We bagged 4 elk." The pilot regretfully explained, "You know, unfortunately, our plane can only fly with the weight of 2 elk. You just have to leave the other 2 behind." Bubba and Jake were infuriated and insistent. "We won't allow you to fly this plane without all 4 elk," Jake demanded. So the eager-to-please pilot relented, and the plane took off with the 3 of them and their 4 elk. After about 15 minutes into the flight, the engine started to sputter, and then within seconds they were hurtling, spiraling to the ground. Wearily arising from the wreckage, Bubba looked at Jake and he whispered, "Do you have any idea where we are?" Jake, quite pleased with himself, replied, "Yes. We're about a mile from where we crashed last year." Right? So we all know that one, you know, this strong desire of wanting what we can't have, whether it's a place at the front of the line or 4 elk. At the end of his life, you know, Sigmund Freud was famed for writing a single sentence on a single piece of paper. And he said on this single sheet, he said, "You know, the ultimate ground of intellectual inhibitions is that there's always something lacking. Always something lacking. Even when we have what we think we want. Do you notice how somehow, eventually, it's not enough? It's not enough. And this is the basis, the firm basis of the Buddha's first noble truth. If you think of desire as a landscape, and on the far end is craving, and the chasm is in between, and on the other far end there's divine fulfillment, anything you want. The bridge that connects the two, that helps us reach the promised land, that's mindfulness. And so it is mindfulness that allows us to recognize the sense of incompleteness in us, that sense that something is lacking, that what we have is not enough. And so over and over again, we find ourselves chasing what we cannot possess, like Sita chasing that deer into the forest, being hypnotized by this or that. Does this resonate with anybody? You ever wanted something that you just knew you couldn't have? I was at Neiman Marcus this weekend, and there were two pair of boots. One for $492, not kidding you, and another for $168 on sale. I couldn't afford those boots. I have a kid in college, just paid my taxes, couldn't afford it. But do you know I wanted those boots? I put them on hold for 2 hours, 2 elk. It's paradoxical, isn't it? You know, and it's informing, and at the same time, it's baffling. We follow desire too far to the left. We're on fire, ablaze with suffering. Listen to what Norman Fisher had to say in his book, Sailing Home. Norman Fisher was here, actually. He taught not too long ago. And he retells this another of my favorite stories. He says that there was a poor tailor in a little town who had a dream that treasure was buried underneath a bridge leading to a castle. So the tailor packs up his bags and he journeys to the capital city. He approaches the bridge that he saw in his dream, but there's a Cossack standing guard. So for long, long, long hours, the tailor just stands there gazing at the bridge, not knowing what to do. Finally, the Cossack asks him, "Why are you standing there so long?" And he looks innocently and sweetly, and he says, he told him about this dream. And the Cossack starts laughing uproariously. "Foolish Jew," he says, "believing in fantasies about sleep. Let me tell you a difference between you and me. I, too, had a dream. You know what my dream was? I dreamt that under the stove of a Jewish tailor in a little town was a buried treasure. You travel all this way at such cost and such effort, chasing dreams for nothing. I, on the other hand, know a dream for a dream and don't waste my time." So the tailor promptly goes home, dug under his stove. Guess what he found? Treasure. And he lived out the rest of his days prosperous. Norman Fisher says, you know, we are all born. All of us are born with a dream. And it wants to lead us elsewhere in search of our heart's desire. Maybe we're practical, he says, down-to-earth people like the Cossack. We ignore the dream. We decide to live our lives stuck where we are. Or maybe we're better dreamers. We follow the dream but fail to see. Fail to see its import. We're ultimately disappointed when it doesn't pan out, when things don't go the way we planned. And so we follow the next dream and the next dream, the next idea and the next idea, always dissatisfied, always seeking something that we never seem to find. Or maybe we're like that simple tailor in the story, and we follow our dream. We pay close enough attention to what's happening in the process. My friends, the story of Rama and Sita is the story of the Buddha's journey, the story of his suggesting to us that we can practice wanting what we have. We can practice being who we are. We can practice doing what we can. A Buddhist phones the monastery and asks the monk, "Can you come to do a blessing at my new house?" The monk replies, "Sorry, I'm busy." She responds by asking, well, what are you doing? Can I help?" "I'm doing nothing," replied the monk. "Doing nothing is a monk's core business, and you can't help me with that." So the next day, the Buddhist person calls again, and she says, "Can you please come to my house and do a blessing?" "Sorry," said the monk. "I'm busy." "What are you doing?" the Buddhist person asks. "I'm doing nothing," replied the monk. "But that's what you were doing yesterday," she said. "Correct," replied the monk. "I'm not finished yet." I'm not finished. When we investigate that space, when we look inside that space, we gain courage to explore it a little bit more and a little bit more. And we discover something strange starts to happen after a while. We notice that our capacity to stay in that space without scratching, right? Without gratifying it, without running away from it, it starts to expand. We start to notice that we're able to be increasingly present for what's here, right here in this moment. And we start to see for ourselves what's true from our own direct experience, what's real from what's Memorex, what's skillful from what's unskillful, what's wholesome from what's unwholesome. We start to see that Santa really is kissing Mama, and the Easter Bunny smokes Virginia Slims, right? We get to see the delusions fall away, this quality of doing nothing and not striving, not going anywhere, not getting someplace, no destination, is how we cultivate present awareness.
So let's just practice for just a moment together. And so as you get comfortable and relax into your space, your seat, you might just begin by offering compassion to yourself. Compassion to your loved ones. Compassion to close acquaintances. People you like but don't know very well. People you may not know at all. And finally, those with whom you might be having some difficulty. You might begin to offer yourself compassion for the ways that you find yourself chasing one craving after another. The way Sita followed the deer. Compassion for when you collapse on your beds, tired and bone weary, being swept away again and again and again by the Ravanas of your life. Compassion for when you find yourself dragged back again and again to the hellish land of suffering. When you've tried so hard to find the one thing, the one person, the one situation that would make the cycle of suffering end and come up short. May you find the courage to follow the Buddha's instructions in the Kalama Sutta and see for yourself whether there is skillfulness in loving what you have, in doing what you can in your practice, and for being who you are, however you are. May you come to appreciate the wisdom of sitting a little longer in the gap between your craving and its gratification. May you give yourself more and more time to see when it's skillful to act on desire and what is needed to let go, and allow the isness or the suchness of the situation to just be the way it is. May you remember your divine genetic endowment, part God, part human, and acknowledge your capacity for both wonder and destruction, for awe and anguish, for power and vulnerability, for capacity for forgetting and for remembering. And may you come to rest easy in the heart of Kuan Yin and transcend the quest for satisfaction through the vehicle of craving. And just come back home to the breath, back to the body, back to the present moment. Take off your hats and scarves and your coats and just rest for a while in this present moment. That is big enough and wide enough and strong enough to hold whatever is emerging for you right now. Made you hold that place of compassion as you listen with your eyes closed or open, whatever works for you. And just to continue a moment of contemplation as we listen to the Buddha's teaching on the matter. He writes, "Better to live in virtue and wisdom for one day than to live 100 years with an evil and undisciplined mind. Better to live in goodness and wisdom for one day than to lead an ignorant and undisciplined life for 100 years. Better to live in strength and wisdom for one day than to lead a weak and idle life for 100 years. Better to live in freedom and wisdom for one day than to lead a conditioned life of bondage for 100 years. One day's glimpse of the deathless state is better than 100 years of life without it. One day's glimpse of Dharma is better than 100 years of life without it. May it be so. And namaste.